So now I would like to extend a welcome to our extraordinary Executive Director, Annie Kidder.
Jackie's been thanking people. I also want to thank people because I want to thank People for Education's incredible staff who not only organize this day, but who work all year to ensure that People for Education can provide new evidence, can engage new audiences, all of you and people beyond that, so that we can interpret changes to public education policies, so that we can translate academic research into information that normal people can actually understand. Nothing against academic research. So that we can form new and stronger partnerships with people all across Ontario, now across Canada. We've got people here from New Brunswick, from Alberta, and from other provinces, and now all around the world. We're talking to people in other countries as well. And they work to ensure that we can embark on new initiatives, groundbreaking initiatives like Measuring What Matters. So that staff is the indomitable Jackie Strawn, who you already met. Hooray for Jackie. She is our engagement director. David Cameron, who's down there somewhere, who is our research director, who is taking us to new and sometimes very dizzying heights. Conrad Heidenreich, who's out there he is, who's our operations director, who makes all of the trains run on time and makes sure that we have money to do the things we want to do, which is no mean feat. The amazing Megan Yeadon, who actually makes all of us work in a coordinated fashion. She's our administrative coordinator, and our newest staff person, Elise Watkins, who's our new policy analyst and research coordinator. Recent graduate from Harvard, but before that from McMaster. And for the conference, you already heard about the fabulous Paul Mark, who's kind of the general of the conference, and all the volunteers. So that is the core group of the people in People for Education. But you guys are also the people in People for Education. And that's what I want to kind of create as the frame for today, is who are these people and what are we trying to do? It's very, very easy, especially over the last few kind of fractious months, to get overwhelmed by the day-to-day issues in public education. And I feel it's to sort of get into just the details and the day-to-day problems and forget the kind of bigger picture. And in public education, in fact, I think we always have a kind of forest and trees problem. Public education is incredibly complex, as you all know, and the forest, the big forest, has many, many trees in it. They're all different, they all have different needs, they all have different goals, and they all have different problems. And the trees inside public education are students, their parents, their funding, their teachers, their special ed, their sports, their mental health, their early childhood education, their school boards, their unions, their principals. Let's not forget students, which we often do. There are a gazillion trees in this forest that is public education. But what I'm hoping for today, as you are learning things, or you're listening to speeches, or you're in workshops wrestling with stuff, or you're just in conversations over lunch, that I hope that all day, despite talking about the individual issues, you keep in mind this forest, this overall context for what it is we're talking about. And then, even beyond keeping in mind the forest, so yes, we've got trees, yes, we've got this forest, I'm just going to keep stretching this analogy as far as it goes before it breaks and you're totally sick of it, that we remember that this forest of public education is actually part of a bigger kind of social ecosystem. I stole that term from the David Suzuki Foundation, so when you're talked to from them later and they use that term, don't think they stole it from me, I stole it from them. And that's why today we're going to be talking about all of these different things. So if you think of public education in this social ecosystem, the social ecosystem includes things like citizenship, the environment, the economy, health, Indigenous peoples. We are all connected. And because they're all connected, all of the issues facing us in Canada I think that one of the things we can think about as our forest, this forest of public education, again, just to keep pushing this, is that we provide the oxygen. That the forest that is public education actually provides the oxygen for all these other issues. Because part of what we're doing, again, is we're educating the next generation, of society. So we have to really think about what we want from that forest, what we want it to be able to do, and how it's connected to this other enterprise. And it's a big enterprise. And again, we are the people who have to think about this. And for me, the other thing that's important about this is that we think of it as a cause. Again, it's really easy to get stuck in the individual, I'm fighting about this, or I'm really mad about this, or, my kids, whatever, isn't working well. We have to keep all those individual things in mind too, but we have to think of public education as a cause, our cause. And a cause isn't necessarily about fighting against things. It's actually fighting for something. So we're fighting for the oxygen. Remember that. It's that big. It's that important. It's very, very easy in Canada to take public education for granted. It's been around for really a long time. In fact, we had a public education system before we were a country. It was part of the vision of the country. More than 90% of our kids go to public schools. They mostly do very, very well. I had a wonderful, if not disturbing, meeting once with somebody who was very smart and the head of a foundation, and I was going to him to try to get money so that we could be advocates for public education. And he went, yeah, but public education, it's like water. It's just there. And I thought, well, like water, actually. It's not just there. And we have to make sure that we're not complacent about it. We have to make sure that we're thinking about this incredibly valuable, wonderful, amazing thing that we have in Canada and in Ontario. That's our public education system. And we also have to remember, like the old Joni Mitchell song, that you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And that it's actually possible to start to kind of create cracks in a system as big and as important as public education. And it's actually possible to start kind of whittling away at it until it's hardly there anymore. Last week, for example, there was a meeting, an all-day meeting. David, our research director, attended it. It was organized by the Fraser Institute and other organizations. And what they wanted to figure out, these are their words, was how to make Ontario a warmer climate for educational diversity. And that sounds so nice and so benign and so soft. And so lovely, warm, diverse. But what they meant was, how can we get out of this awful thing that is the government running our schools, and how can we not have to have a public education system? How can we have a market model where there's competition and where it appeals to individual needs, and we don't have this thing called public education? So that's happening in Canada. If we look at other things that are happening in Canada, despite not that we're political or partisan or anything, but we have elected a new government, so maybe part of this will change. But one of the things we seem to have lost is our enthusiasm for paying for public institutions. Public education is very, very expensive, but again, oxygen, we need it, all of us. But we seem to have decided we don't like paying taxes anymore. We've forgotten the old adage that taxes are the price we pay for civilization. We've gotten into thinking of public education as a kind of private rather than a public good. And it's hard because it has to be both. It has to help me, my individual child, my individual school, the schools in my neighborhood. But we also have to keep remembering it as part of this big public enterprise, and we have to pay for it. Sometimes we thought we should change our name to People for Taxes instead. And public education is continually facing cuts to funding because of that, because we've decided we don't like taxes anymore. Right now, public education in Ontario, we are working to take out $500 million out of the education system. That's a lot of money, and that's definitely going to have ramifications. We just have to look south of the border or across the ocean to see how easy it is. And I am not saying we are like the United States, and it is important to remember that we're not. But David and I went to a conference in Chicago last year, and I was so shocked at how much everybody had just come to accept the fact that they were really rapidly undoing their public education system in the United States. So the number of charter schools, which are publicly funded, but about a third of them run by private companies, has increased by 300% in the United States in the last 10 years. And I'm going to just give you some numbers here, just because they shocked me. In New Orleans, 90% of the kids go to private schools. In Detroit, not very far away, 55% go to charter schools. Washington, D.C., 44%. Cleveland, 39%. Philadelphia, 30%. Kansas City, 37%. Los Angeles, 21% of the kids are in charter schools. And again, a third of those are run by private companies, some of them for-profit companies. And the feeling that you get when you're in the United States is that ship has sailed. It's never going to come back. Their country, which was also had a very strong commitment to public education, has given up on that idea and is now dismantling the system. In England, too, only 5 years ago, 2% of the schools were called academies or free schools. These are government-funded schools, but they're funded on a kind of private model. In 2010, 2% were. Last year, 22% were. So that they also are moving away from this system, this idea that it's important that we have one system filled with many, many, many flaws, it's important to understand, but that we have one public education system. And Canada is not immune to this. So we have to remember that as we're thinking about this. And again, that it is possible to undermine this, and it's partly possible because of the language we have these days about the market model, about, why do we have to spend so much on public institutions. But the question then becomes, how do we ensure, us together, that there are more people in this cause? How do we ensure that we remember that it is a cause and that we are engaging more and more people in it, and especially people outside of the people directly involved in the system. And so the thing I said before about a cause is that it can't just be against things. We can't just be fighting privatization, because that doesn't make me want to join at all. It has to have a vision. And you have to have that kind of positive energy. What is it we're working for? What is our idea of what the future is going to look like? What is the vision for public education? And at People for Education, we've been around for 19 years now. This is our 19th annual conference. We spent the first probably 17 years of our life reacting to, doing research on, talking about, communicating about what is in the system. And we did, I think, really good work in that way. But over the last 2 years, we've been making a shift. And that shift is toward what could be. What should it be like? What are the possibilities in public education? What is the potential in our public education? So instead of just reacting to what's going on right now, it's more, how do we connect this idea to our own kids' future and to the future of Canada? So again, it has to do with thinking about the promise that's possibly there in this incredible oxygen system that we have in our public education system. And that's why you're going to hear all day in various workshops about measuring what matters. But that's why we're working on this initiative called Measuring What Matters. And it's an initiative we're working with lots of scholars, with parents, with policymakers, with government, with people in other provinces, to talk about how we can ensure that we have broader, more ambitious goals for our public education system to ensure that the next generation can live happy, healthy, economically secure, civically engaged lives. That's the individual vision that we want, but also to ensure that Canada has the oxygen it needs to thrive, to compete, to be a fair and prosperous society. So again, public education has these two jobs, the individual job, so equipping, building, everybody hates it in our organization when I talk about building kids, but anyway, building the kids we need for for the future, but also ensuring that Canada itself, when we think about what Canada needs, that we're looking at our schools and going, okay, what do we have to do in our schools to get Canada what it needs? What kind of graduates do we need? So when we're talking on the panel after lunch, that's what we're going to be talking about. So what we're going to do, what we have been doing, is beginning to articulate those goals. But then goals can just be rhetoric. We all know, we've heard, I think politicians and government are very, very important, but it becomes very easy to listen to, kind of political goals that get set and go, yeah, whatever. Goals can be quite empty unless you're figuring out how you measure your progress towards those goals. If you're not really looking at whether or not you're getting anywhere, then the goals are meaningless. So I run a not-for-profit. We get funding from foundations. We have to tell them what we're going to do with their money. And then we have to measure our progress and say, we did this with it, this with it, this with it. We thought we were going to get here, but we didn't. We got here. Teachers assess every single day, students. So it's important that we think about, because measurement drives policy, it drives funding, it drives the time that we take in our schools, that we're going to set these broad goals. Then we have to figure out how we measure those goals, because that actually is the thing that starts to change what we do in our schools. So this movement that we're in, that I hope you agree we're all part of, this cause that we're embarked on, does require all of us. It requires you. It requires the people that you go back to and talk to in your communities. It requires all of us to be thinking, and again, going throughout the day, thinking about how important this cause is. That there's really, I was at an event the other day, and Sheldon Levy, who's right now the president of Ryerson University, but going to be the Deputy Minister of Training Colleges and Universities, said public education will always be the most important work we do as a society. So we have to think of it that way and think of the connections between public education and democracy. And this is now my crass ad. To do this work, it also requires money. People for Education does not operate on air. We do have a staff. We do a lot of different kinds of work and provide a lot of different kinds of information to everybody. We are influencing policy, but we need you to be a partner with us in this, in terms of coming here, talking, be subscribing to our listserv. But it would also really, really help, this is the ad, if you would be willing to fill out one of these handy-dandy cards, which you have in your folders, that says, I want to be a partner for education, and you could be a monthly donor. And by being a monthly donor, then we have a kind of bunch of regular contributors who help us know that we're going to have money to operate on. The beautiful, wonderful, magnificent Megan over there has a beautiful, wonderful silver box. Look at her, the Vanna of People for Education. Very good, Megan. Even if every single one of you here said, I will contribute $10 a month, I feel like one of those obnoxious people on the sidewalk. Anyway, for only $10 a month, it would make a huge difference to us. So, as you're going throughout the day, when you get inspired by something, go, I know what I could do about this. I could give People for Education $10 a month. And then I wouldn't have to do anything else. Then I could just go out for drinks and feel like I'd done my job. So, please, please think about doing this. Really, truly, $10 a month, that's like 2 coffees. That would be a huge help to us. I think that's, for me, the most important thing, though, is that you know that coming to a conference, I'm sure you all go to lots and lots of conferences, that it's easy to go, I went to the conference, now I'm done, back to my normal life. If you can keep remembering every day in all the different things that you do as parents, as teachers, as school trustees, as researchers, as community organizers, as just plain interested citizens, that you are the people that are providing the thinking and the work that provides the oxygen for the whole rest of Canada. That's how important this is. That's why we have to think about it so hard. And that's why good for all of us that we're here on a Saturday morning. I thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.